Well, now, snuggle in, little one. Let Grandpa take you to a very special place, far away from the noise and rush of the world, nestled between two misty hills and hidden from most maps. It's called the Clockmaker's Village. Some say the air there smells like oil and rain. Others say you can hear soft ticking at night, like hundreds of clocks all dreaming together. But the truth is, it's quieter than a whisper and older than the wind. In this quaint little village, every house had a weather vane, every chimney smoked with sweet-scented firewood, and every soul, young and old, wore a timepiece. Some had pocket watches passed down for generations. Others wore tiny sundials around their necks, and a few even kept their time in sand-filled pendants. But all of them, every single one, came from one man's shop, old Mr. Elliott's clockbooks. Mr. Elliott wasn't just a clockmaker. No, he was something of a magician in overalls. His clocks didn't just tick. They told dreams, remembered birthdays, and even hummed lullabies at bedtime. His little shop sat at the very top of Ticky Hill, the heart of the village, and no one could remember a time when the hill didn't have Elliot or his clock. The children loved to climb the hill after school and press their ears to the wooden walls of Elliot's shop. From inside came the clink of tiny gears, the soft whir of springs, sometimes a strange little beating, as though the clocks were sharing secrets. Now, our story begins on the first day of the sleepy season. That's what villagers call the long stretch of early winter, when fall rolled in thick, and the stars hung low like lanterns on a string. The day began like any other, with the village rooster forgetting the time, as he often did, and crowing at the little moon. Young Clara Finch, a curious girl with tangled hair and a satchel full of half-finished poems, was walking up Ticking Hill. Clara visited Mr. Elliott every week, mostly to hear his stories about old clocks, forgotten bells, and the time owl who nested above the shop's chimney. But today, as Clara reached the shop, she noticed the door was ajar. That had never happened before. Mr. Elliott, who was as punctual as the sun was, always opened the door with a chime of 10 and closed it with a sigh at 6. Now the little bell above the door didn't ring. The air smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. "Mr. Elliott?" Clara called softly. No answer. She stepped inside. The shelves were lined with clocks of all kinds. Grandfather clocks, cuckoo clocks, tiny wristwatches nestled in velvet, and one very strange clock that ticked without hands. But there was no sign of Elliot. Instead, on the counter lay an envelope. Her name was written on it in curling ink, for Clara, when the ticking stops. Clara's hands trembled a little as she opened it. Inside was a note. Time is shifting. You must find the 12 lost hours. Each one holds a key to waken the great clock beneath the hill. It must not sleep forever. And just like that, every clock in the shop stopped ticking. Not 1 second passed. The silence was so deep, it felt like a blanket had been thrown over the world. Clara looked around, heart racing, with eyes widely open. 12 lost hours, she whispered. A small golden gear rolled off the counter and landed at her feet. She picked it up, and at once the cuckoo clock of the far wall chirped once, just once. She held the gear tight. "I guess I'm going on an adventure," she said. And Ma, wasn't she right? So now, dear one, close your eyes and drift gently, because every tick has a story, and the tale of Clara and the 12 lost hours has only just begun. The very next morning, Clara stood outside her cottage with the golden gear wrapped in a handkerchief tucked safely into the coat pocket. The fog had rolled in thick, thicker than anyone would think it could be. It covered everything, swallowing up rooftops and blurring patches of gray clouds. It wasn't afraid. Something inside her felt steady, like the quiet flicker of that second wind. She knew what she had to do. Mr. Elliott's note had mentioned the 12 lost hours, and her heart whispered that the first hour was waiting somewhere inside this very fog. Clara stepped off the porch and into the white grass. At first, it was silent. Then she began to hear soft whispers, not frightening ones now, but like old friends greeting each other in hushed tones. The fog wasn't just fog, it was alive. It remembered him. Who's that? Clara asked gently. No answer. But ahead of her, a path appeared, glowing faintly as with silvery light. She followed it. Trees began to rise from the mist, and their branches bent low, draped in webs of time. She passed a gate that hadn't existed the day before, its bars twisted into hourglass shapes. Beyond it was a garden, or rather, what once had been a garden, now full of frozen vines and clock hands poking up like weeds. In the center of the garden stood a statue, an owl made entirely of gears and glass. Clara stepped closer and saw a plaque beneath it. Here rests the first hour. Speak the truth to wake it. She looked up at the owl. Its eyes were closed, its wings folded. Truth? Clara murmured. She thought for a moment. Then she stepped forward and placed the golden gear in the owl's chest, where a small indentation waited. She closed her eyes and spoke aloud. I'm scared, but I want to help. I don't know how yet, but I'll listen. I'll try. The owl's eyes snapped open. There was a soft whirring sound, and the statue's wings opened with a gentle creak. A pulse of warm light spread through the fog, and for the first time, Clara could see the village again below her, sleeping in peace. Inside the owl's chest, the gear turned once. A voice echoed in the wind. The first hour remembers. The clock stirs. Clara smiled. 1 hour found, 11 more to go. And all around her, the fog began to sing. Clara followed the path cleared by the owl's warm light. As she walked through the singing fog, the sounds began to change, less like whispers now and more like chimes, low and distant, echoing through the trees. Soon, she found herself at the edge of a hollow. The ground dipped gently, and at the bottom sat a circular workshop made entirely of bronze bells, big and small. It rang softly every time the wind touched it. She stepped inside and was greeted by silence. The walls were lined with bells of every shape and kind, all hanging quietly. A figure moved behind the largest bell, a boy no older than 12, with soot on his face and a hammer in hand. He didn't seem startled to see her. "You're here for the second hour," he said simply. Clara nodded. "Do you know where it is?" He motioned to a ladder. "It's up there, but you have to ring the bell to wake it. Not with force, though. You must strike it with meaning." Clara hesitated. Then she looked around and found a small polished stone nearby. She held it in her hand and climbed the ladder to the top of the largest bell. She closed her eyes, thought of Mr. Elliot, and the moment every clock had stopped. With one gentle motion, she tapped the bell. A deep, resonant tone spread across the hollow, and from the center of the bell's dome, a silver ribbon of smoke rose. In it, the shape of a key turned slowly. The boy smiled from below. "You found it. The second hour's been heard." And as Clara climbed down, A second gear appeared at her feet, glowing faintly. She picked it up, and the sound of bells followed her all the way back through the forest. The fog faded behind Clara as she stepped into a different part of the woods, where trees twisted upward like frozen rivers of wood and glass. Hanging from every branch were hourglasses, some no bigger than Clara's thumb, others as large as lanterns. They sparkled faintly with golden sand that never seemed to fall. This was the hourglass orchard. The orchard faded behind her like a dream slipping away at dawn. Clara walked with the third gear gently tucked in her satchel, its warm tick comforting her heart like a whisper of promise. Beyond the grove, the land sloped into low meadows glazed with frost, and tucked between the roots of an old elm tree stood a narrow staircase leading downward, though strangely it seemed to climb instead of descend. She followed it, and the air grew warmer with each step. The scent of wax, herbs, and something soft and old filled her nose. She emerged not in a cellar, but in an attic that could not possibly exist below the ground. Hundreds of candles stood on crooked tables along rafters and balanced atop half-read books. Some flickered with pale blue flames, others glowed steady gold, and a few shimmered green like moonlight through leaves. In the corner sat a woman wrapped in patchwork shawls, eyes closed, rocking in a chair carved with swirling constellations. She opened her eyes when Clara entered and smiled, revealing teeth like candle wax. "You've come for the 4th hour," she said. Clara nodded. The woman reached to the nearest table and picked up a candle shaped like a sleeping bird. "This one holds the hour, but you must not light it unless your heart is still. Are you still, child?" Clara didn't answer at first. Her thoughts swirled with fog, bells, and time trees. But then she remembered the quiet hum of Elliot's shop, the steady chime of the village church bell, and her promise to try. She took a deep breath. Her heart slowed. "I think I am," she said. The woman handed her the candle and stepped back. Clara took a match from the dish and lit the wick. The flame rose and didn't stop. It stretched into the air, curled like a feather, and then bent itself into the shape of a clock hand pointing straight up. The attic was suddenly silent. All flame stilled. The air hummed, and the bird candle cracked open. Inside, resting gently in its waxy belly, was the 4th gear. "The candle remembers," whispered the woman. "The 4th hour burns again." Clara took the gear and stepped back through the doorway, which now led to a hill under starlight. Night had come softly, without thunder or warning. The stars were brighter than Clara had ever seen, painted across the sky like lanterns caught in a spider's web. She wandered across a stone path laced with moss until it brought her to the edge of a small pond, perfectly still. Beside the water sat an old man in a wool coat, holding a long wooden broom. He was sweeping the surface of the pond as if it were a floor, and as his broom brushed the water, stars flickered across its surface, echoing those above. He looked up and gave Clara a quiet smile. "I've been waiting for you. The 5th hour drifted into the water some time ago. I've been keeping it from sinking." Clara stepped closer, watching the reflections dance. "How do I find it?" she asked. "You must ask the stars," he said, "but they only speak to those who whisper kindly." Clara knelt at the edge of the pond and looked into the water. "Please," she whispered, "if you're listening, help me find what was lost." The pond shimmered. One star, brighter than the others, drifted from the sky and hovered just above the surface. It pulsed once and then dove into the water. Clara reached out and touched the place it disappeared. The water rippled, then cleared. Beneath the surface, glimmering gently among the reeds, was a small silver gear. She dipped her hand in, took it, and held it tight. "The fifth hour has returned," the star sweeper said, sweeping once more. "You've got a quiet way about you. Keep that." Clara nodded, smiling, and turned to follow a path made of fallen stars that led beyond the trees. The path twisted through thickets of pale lilac and frostbitten grass, finally opening to a wide field. In its center stood a towering windmill, spinning not with wind, but with sighs. The sails turned with the sound of breath, soft, gentle, and wistful. Clara approached and found the windmill's door already open. She stepped inside. The room within was filled with mirrors, some clear, some clouded, and others swirling with images from lives not her own. A baby laughing in a crib, an old man tying a blue ribbon, a young girl skipping stones beside a train. At the top of the windmill stood a clock without hands, its face cracked in 12 places. On the stairs sat a girl made of glass and ribbons, staring at her own reflection. "You're looking for the 6th hour," she said without turning. Clara nodded. "You'll need to give something up to find it," the girl murmured. "A memory, not gone but shared, something precious." Clara thought. She remembered her mother's lullaby, sung just once in a dream. She whispered the tune aloud. It floated through the windmill like a ghost. The girl's face lit up with gentle sorrow. "Thank you," she said. The mirrors flickered, and one shattered. Behind it, resting on a velvet pillow, was the 6th gear. Clara took it, heart aching and light at once. The girl bowed. The 6th hour turns again. The windmill's top floor opened not to a roof, but to a bridge of light that spanned the sky. Clara walked across it, gears tucked tight, until she reached a building that hadn't been there before. A round library built of oak, brick, and silence. She pushed open the great doors. Inside, bookshelves curved like the rings of a tree, stacked with books that didn't open until you whispered to them. She wandered deeper and found a woman sorting parchment with gloves of spider silk. "The 7th hour is in a book that's never been read," she said, "and you must read it aloud." Clara picked up a book with no title. Its cover was cool and smooth. She opened it. Inside was a single line, "The 7th hour waits in words unspoken." She cleared her throat and read the line aloud. At once, the shelves shook. Pages fluttered like wings. A single book dropped from the ceiling, landing softly at Clara's feet. She opened it. The 7th gear fell out, spinning once before settling. "The library remembers," said the woman. Clara bowed, holding the gear close. The library faded like a dream, and Clara stepped onto a cobbled platform surrounded by darkness. Only one small train car waited there, painted with stars and moons and curious symbols she didn't recognize. A conductor with silver gloves opened the door. "All aboard for the 8th hour." She climbed in. The train had no roof. As it moved, the sky shifted colors, turquoise, violet, amber. The walls of the world seemed painted in watercolor, and scenes changed with every breath. A child's laughter in a garden, an old woman stirring soup, a fox chasing shadows. As the train slowed, a soft voice filled the air. "Every painted world holds a memory. The hour hides the one that feels like home." Clara gazed at the scenes. until one stopped her heart, a tiny clock shop at the top of a green hill. She stepped off the train into the painted village, the scent of oil and cedar in the air. Elliot's shop stood quiet. On the counter, just like before, was a small envelope. It opened itself, and inside lay a single silver gear. Clara took it, and the train whistled in the distance, fading into the paint. Beyond the painted village, Clara entered a canyon carved from moonlight and shadow. At its heart roared a forge where flames danced in silence. Tools floated through the air, shaping dreams out of stardust and memory. A broad-shouldered figure hammered something unseen on an anvil of cloud. He looked up with sparks in his beard. "Clara Finch," he said, "8th gear already? You're moving fast." Clara smiled faintly. "I'm trying." He handed her a lump of glowing ore. "The 9th hour is locked inside. You must forge it yourself. Shape it not with strength, but with intention." Clara took up a tiny hammer and struck the ore once, thinking of her promise to Elliot, of the sleeping clocks, of her own growing courage. The ore unfolded into a delicate, perfectly formed gear. The dreamsmith bowed. "You've given shape to what was lost. The 9th hour is yours." Past the canyon lay a single rope bridge spanning a chasm of stars. It swayed gently in the breeze, strung with glowing threads like harp strings. Clara stepped onto the bridge, and each footfall made a musical note. As she walked, the tune built into a lullaby. Halfway across, she saw a man playing a violin made of moonlight. He played the tune she had just made with her steps. Smiling, he said, "The 10th hour hides in harmony. You've already summoned it." He handed her a violin string made of silver light. It curled into the shape of a gear. She bowed gratefully and crossed the rest of the bridge with the lullaby echoing behind her. Clara followed the path to the edge of a deep hollow. There, half buried in earth and root, stood a clock larger than a house. Its hands were missing, its face cracked. Inside, dust covered the gears and pulleys. Time itself seemed to avoid the place. A whisper stirred the air. "To find the 11th hour, you must give something to the clock." Clara stepped inside and placed all the gears she'd gathered on the stone altar within. Light flared briefly, and the broken clock shuddered. A single gear, golden and radiant, rose from the center. Clara took it and whispered, "One more." The 11th hour ticked once. A sound like 1,000 heartbeats echoed from within. The great clock beneath the hill was waking. A hush fell over the forest, over the chasms and clouds and painted worlds. The moment Clara held the final gear, the path changed. No longer dirt or starlight, but polished grass lined with quiet tickings and faint hums. She walked it, the world blurring around her, until she stood once again in Elliot's clock shop. Everything was as it had been. The smell of cedar, the faint whirl of gears, the dust motes in the light. Except now, the grand clock on the back wall stood open, its core exposed, glowing faintly. Clara stepped forward and with steady fingers placed each of the 12 gears into place. As the last one clicked in, the entire shop breathed, a low, beautiful sigh that made her eyes sting with tears. Time resumed. The clocks on the wall woke, one by one, each chime a ripple through the air. And then, from the staircase behind the shop, footsteps. Elliot. He looked the same, maybe older, maybe not. He smiled, and his eyes were full of joy. "You did it," he said. "You brought back the hours." Clara ran to him, and they embraced. That night, the village did not sleep. It ticked and tocked and hummed with life. Stories were told of the girl who gathered hours from the ends of dreams, and from that day forward, no clock in the village ever lost its rhythm again. Well now, my little dreamer, that's the end of our story for tonight. The clocks are all ticking gently again, and everything is just as it should be. You've walked through forests of starlight, danced across bridges of song, and helped a whole village remember time itself. Now, it's your time to rest, to breathe, to drift off ever so softly. So close your eyes. Let the quiet of the night wrap around you like a warm blanket. Hear the gentle patter of rain outside, steady and calm. You are safe. You are loved. And everything will be waiting for you when morning comes. Good night, little one. Sleep deeply, sleep sweetly, and I'll see you again when the clock chimes softly in your dreams.